Happy new day here. That's what I'm talking about. Let's go. Shadeur Sanders. Whoa. What a weekend. What a draft. Well, the draft got a lot of high ratings. I think they got over 7 million people that watch per day. Typically, I don't even watch the draft that long, especially after the first round. But something interesting happened, as a lot of us know, where Shadeur Sanders was not selected until the 144th pick. I actually did a little parody, little YouTube short about it. You could check that out also. But it's really not a laughing matter because when it comes down to it, you have somebody who, and I didn't think this class of quarterbacks draft was that great anyway, but, still, he still deserved his just due where he was previously looked to be ranked at, which was in the first round, right? Of course, his father is the great Deion Sanders, who I watched growing up as a kid and thought that, this guy was just, especially for the position he played, which was D-back, was just an amazing player. Just he brought a lot of different swag. He brought a lot of different things to the game of football, right? So, and of course you had people that try to mimic him and everything. Even at the lower levels, even when I was playing, Pop Warner youth, football, stuff like that, you had a lot of people who, wanted to do it and did the little thing with the hand behind the head as he was running to the touchdown, to score a touchdown. So his son, like I said, was expected to get drafted, and I even thought that he would go somewhere like the New Orleans Saints. I think at the number 9 pick, and then they said that the Giants, in need of a quarterback, drafted up and then got their quarterback. I think maybe 25th pick. I'm not sure. So there was a lot of stuff going around, right? The Cleveland Browns, who've always needed a quarterback. No offense to any Cleveland fans, but who've always needed a quarterback. And one of those organizations who just never seem to get stuff quite right. They haven't been in an AFC Championship game, I believe, since they had the great Kevin Mack, who was a running back in the late 80s. All right. So that's kind of their deal. The reason why I wanted to touch this subject was because people always talk about, when we talk about especially racism, it typically does come back up. It comes back up in a lot of ways. And typically it's always black or white, black versus white. So let's give an example relative to this situation where you have a guy, he's a grown man, so I'm not going to call him a kid to me, but he's 22 years old. He deserved to be drafted earlier than what he did. And some people may say, well, look, at least he got drafted. But the thing is that because of where he got drafted, there's one, no guarantee by any team that he has to play. And then number two, he also has lost out on anywhere from 20 to possibly $40 million in salary because it's scaled based off of where you're drafted at. If you didn't know, and I don't know the particulars, but you can look it up. So, but he took a nosedive as far as money. And I know some people may say, well, he already has money, his family has money, and all that other kind of stuff. But that doesn't mean that you take money away from a person because you don't like how they are. And I'll give you for an example. So, just talking to a couple of different friends. And, just want to give a shout out to a couple of homies, Rashid and Javon. But just talking to a couple other friends, there's no way that if you're being drafted, and even one of the guys that does the draft, Mel Kiper, said it, that you have that large of a fall off, that you drop that far, right? I know Stephen A. Smith had even from ESPN even said that it seemed like it was collusion, but basically they didn't have to say it. I felt the same way because as an older black guy, right, as an older black man, there's always, or there should be, not just in me, but in you also, there should be a sense of, hey, look, we want to make sure that the ones that are under us, that are younger than us, have a fair path, have a straight road. Just like some of us that grew up in the 70s, 80s, or 90s, we don't know about racism to the extent of people do have in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, or being chased by dogs, by police that were supposed to protect you, or water hoses blown on you and blowing you away, blowing people away because they're trying to protest, or you going somewhere and somebody tells you, yo, I know you got to use the bathroom, but no, you need to go 5 miles down the street, but I'm hungry. Oh, well, you need to go down where they serving colored folks at, right? See, a lot of this stuff, because we've gotten so to the point where everything is, oh, okay, well, I can buy myself a Bentley and I can do all this other kind of stuff. It doesn't take away from the fact that there are still things that happen on an everyday basis that affect Black people. And sports is supposed to be the one place where, there's meritocracy based off of your merit, based off of how good you are. That's why I love sports, because it's not like a movie where it's scripted. It's not like uh, what else? Like WWE or WWF, where that's more scripted. When I was a kid, I didn't believe it was scripted. But as I've gotten older, I understand that. So, football is one of those deals. Sports is one of those deals where you really want to see people win, and it's based off of their merit, what they can do. That's why in all sports there's a number system. Somebody has to have more numbers or more points than the other person or team. That's the way it goes. There is no being subjective as far as, well, you know what? I like him a little more. So you know what? I'm going to help him out a little more, or I'm going to root for him. The same way the Oscars or Emmys or Grammys are, where because such a large contingent of voters happen to not look Black, right? So you have a lot of people who vote in ways that are more geared towards things that they like. Think about it. If you were a person voting on ice cream, right? You were one of the ice cream voters, right? And so, but you got an allergic reaction to nuts, right? You got an allergic reaction to nuts, but you got 20, 30 different ice creams to vote on. You're allergic to nuts, so you don't even eat ice cream with nuts. So how could you vote on an ice cream with nuts in it if you're not the person that eats nuts? Translation: a lot of times in these rooms, there are no Black people or few. So when there are no people to represent a certain opinion or a certain way of being, then that just gets thrown out the window, because it doesn't matter, because there's no representation. That is the reason why it is important to have diversity, because diversity says, hey, look, I can tell you as a Black guy, growing up in the inner city, listen, even if people do smoke cigarettes, for me growing up in the 90s, you don't call a person a smoker. You know what I'm saying? If you call a person a smoker, that's a negative word or meaning, depending on what era and what type of Black people you know. Certain things you just don't say. It's certain things you don't do. Do I like the fact that, Shadeur walks around with a bunch of jewelry and all of that stuff? No, I do not. Right? It's not really my thing. I can't afford it. But beyond that, I'm more along the thinking of, yo, get out there and do the work, because it's a team. And your team may not have the same type of access to money and jewelry and things that you have. So because it's a team, when you out doing your other stuff, you can floss as much as you want to, but focus in and hone in on what's going on with the team, right? And so let all of those other things be to the wayside. But if he's still being productive and doing it, and that's the opinion of a 50-year-old man, right? He's 22 years old. Culturally, I mean, even within a culture, things are different. Things are different. So even if I were in one of those, they call them war rooms and the thing, you still say, hey, listen, you give him a shot, because first of all, he's going to bring instant attention to our program. And most times it's a school. I mean, school. It's a team that needs the people in there, like the Cleveland Browns need it. Okay, let's not get it messed up. Myles Garrett is a beast. but he's on defense, and it's only but so much that he can do. They need some pop in Cleveland. Period. They ain't had no pop. Well, they doing good now in basketball, but since LeBron was there, they need some pop in Cleveland. New York, the New York Football Giants, to my knowledge, have never drafted a black quarterback. If I'm wrong, please put it in the comments. To my knowledge, they've never had a black head coach. So when I start hearing stuff like, well, Shadeur came in here and he was better than everybody, he acted like he was better than everybody, or he didn't want to do this, or he had such an attitude, or he was a diva, and all of this other kind of stuff, save me with that. Because y'all have a rich history of not having either one. So you want to tell me you're a team that's never had a black quarterback drafted, that I know, or black head coach, that I know, right? But you want to say that, oh no, we went with this other kid because that's who we felt better with. That's fine. You can feel better with him. But the thing I'm saying to you is that a lot of speculation had gone around, either him possibly going to New York, the Giants, possibly going to New Orleans, right? And I don't know too much about Cleveland, but Cleveland, you damn sure needed him. So when we start to look at things like this, because I remember when I used to work a full-time job, right? And I was working over at the psych hospital. I remember saying before, because, sometimes they'll have these, I don't want to call them BS round table meetings where, they call people in and they want people's opinion and stuff like that. And so one of the first things I said, because I know when I used to work with this group called AmeriCorps, and one thing I will give to them, it's kind of like the Peace Corps, except in America. So if you're familiar with Habitat for Humanity, ours was the National School and Community Corps. So what we would try to do is that, or City Year also, what we would try to do is that because there were so many different types of people that worked there, diversity was key. And we would have diversity trainings ongoing so that people understood how to interact with people. See, it's different to interact with someone when you don't even understand them. So when you don't understand somebody, you make assumptions about them. We all do it, but it's different when the assumptions or when the judgments that are made against people affect people. That's when there's an issue. That's why racism is so bad. It's such a horrible thing, is because it affects people. It stops people from going certain places where they should probably deservedly go. I think a lot of us are past the point where, worrying about the N word or, whatever it is. And I did a good thing about that. Go check that out. A lot of people didn't watch it, but if you get a chance, go check out what I said, what I had to say about the N word. Because here's the deal. The race relations in my lifetime, I don't think will get better overall. But the thing is, and what I mean by better overall, just because nobody's throwing a banana at you or has a color only does not mean that there is still a serious issue with racism, the distribution of power. And it's not just because black people don't know anything. There's a lot of well-educated black people who do and who have done great things. But just because their network isn't as high reaching does not mean that they should be out of an opportunity. You have to, diversity, talking about race is an ongoing thing. Why? Because it's an ongoing problem. You can't just shuck away and say, oh, that's no big deal. Just like even, sometimes the crap that the president does. He placates to popular black people. Okay. Just like that crap yesterday with Saquon. He placates to popular black people to say, oh, you know what? Hey, I like them all. I'm all, I'm all in with them. Right. But, we'll talk about that with Saquon a little bit on the next one. But the thing is that just because you're a black celebrity, that doesn't represent most of us. That doesn't represent how people should be treated. Because it lets you know a lot of times people are just treating you well or treating them well because they are a celebrity. But most of the world are not filled with celebrities. They're filled with regular people every day, like you and me. So hey, when you get a chance, hey, share this video. Hopefully somebody out there can enjoy it. Do me a favor, like, comment, subscribe too. You know what I mean? We gotta get these subscribers up. So, but hey, what do you think about the Shadeur Sanders situation? You know what I mean? You going, you think all of this, doing this meant such a big deal, or was it the powers that be? But hey, until next time, remember, live life. Don't let life live you.